Rev up your engines!
Gregory Tolson says, Scotty, why is a used BMW 6 Series so cheap? Because they're endless money pits as they age, and everybody knows it. The market understands, and people know, oh, you buy one of those things, it's an endless money pit. Price the parts are super expensive. And the problem with all the modern ones is everything's plastic. Now, when I was young, BMWs could last a long time. I had customers with 300,000 miles and more on BMWs, and they still ran perfectly fine. They had original engines and transmissions, but not any late model ones. Everything is plastic, and over time, the heat gets to them. They crack, they warp. You don't want to buy a used BMW that has all these plastic parts, because you might think, oh, it's just a plastic part. It's cheap. Well, one, it's a BMW plastic part, so it's not cheap. And even with, like, say, a cooling line, they have cooling lines under the intake manifold on the engine that are plastic instead of metal. If they're metal, they last forever, right? Well, they made them out of plastic. They crack from the heat and they leak. But to get to them, you have to take the intake manifold. So you're going to spend, thousands of dollars replacing the stupid little part that should never worn out in the first place. Adam Baum says, Chevy or Ford? Well, I learned to drive on a Chevy Biscayne. Looks like an Impala. But that was in the 1960s, and they were tanks then, ran forever. Today, Ford over Chevy by a long shot. GM quality's just... And the Ford quality and a lot of their stuff actually has gone up in quality. I would definitely go Ford these days. Now, if you were talking old, like if you were going to buy an old 60s pickup, you could go Chevy or Ford. They were both really good back then. And if it was all done over, it could be an excellent vehicle. But today, I'd go Ford over Chevy by a landslide. Alex Cruz says, Scotty, what do you think of a 1998 Honda Civic EX Coupe? It has 168,000 miles. I want to keep it till I finish college. What can I do to make it last another few years? Thanks. I've seen those things have 500,000 miles on them. Change the oil regulator. It's an oil car. Change the oil every 4,000 miles. Use Castrol GTX. That's a good oil. Don't ever overheat the engine. If you don't do anything to the cooling system, change the cooling system with long life 5 to 7 year coolant and change it every 5 years or so. Those things can last a really, really long time. They're well-made cars. But it's old, so, don't decide your Honda Civic's going to be a drifter car and start drifting around. You're going to burn everything out, yeah? Mary Novick says, Scotty, I recently bought a 2008 Pontiac Vibe. Was told it's the same as the Toyota Matrix inside. What do you think? Yeah, same engine, transmission, brakes, and stuff. They are somewhat cheaper made because they have Pontiac body parts and stuff on them. And some of them have AC Delco alternators instead of the Nippon Denso one that Toyota uses. They do have some cheaper parts on them. But basically, running-wise, they're almost the same car as the Matrix. And they can last a really long time. And since they've got the Pontiac name, an extinct company, you can get them a lot cheaper. Like if you bought a 2008 Toyota Matrix, you'd probably pay anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000 for it. You can get the Vibes a lot cheaper, so hopefully you paid a lot less. And yeah, they can be good cars. They're not the exact same car, but for all intents and purposes, their running gear and everything is, so they can last a long time. Jimmy Jam 16 says, love the show. My 97 GMC C1500 has a blinking check engine light, but it doesn't show any codes. When they blink, that means there's a serious problem. But if it doesn't show any codes, then you got a problem either with those pins where you plug the data port in. A lot of times if they're bent, they won't read any codes. Or there's a wiring short between the connector and the computer, or the computer itself has a fault. Because, of course, if a computer is shorting out internally and it's flashing a check engine light, if it's bad enough, it's not going to give you any codes because the computer's broken and that circuitry won't interface with your machine. I see that a lot. But do check for bent pins. That's what, 97, so that thing's old. And a lot of times people plug them in and out, bend the pins. Look really closely at those pins. Make sure none of them are bent. Because a lot of times they will bend over the years. Or if they have a lot of corrosion and they're, instead of copper, they're green, clean the corrosion off and then maybe your machine will read the codes then. Red One Gamer says, Scotty, what's your opinion on Kawasaki KZ550? Where can I find parts? I tried to find parts my dad gave me, but nothing so far. Those were excellent little motorcycles. There's nothing wrong with them. Kawasaki makes great motorcycles. The thing is, when you have an old one, they want you to buy new ones. So they generally, parts for motorcycles are real high. They're not like cars. They're toys. They're not regular transportation in the United States. So, if they want a ton of money, you gotta go to the dealer. My advice with stuff like that is go to motorcycle salvage yards. That's what I always did when I had older motorcycles. I'd go to the salvage yards. Say the carburetors were shot, I'd go to the salvage and I'd buy a whole set of carburetors for maybe $150 for all four, and then I'd take them all apart and rebuild them all and put them back in, and away you go. But it's always a hassle with older motorcycles getting parts. It just is, because they don't care about the old ones. They want you to buy new ones. The Japanese make great motorcycles, there's no arguing that, but getting parts is always fun. Try to get a relationship with a motorcycle salvage yard. That's usually the best thing.
So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.